Good morning. Welcome to Carmel Valley Community Chapel. It's great to have you all here. I want to thank Peter Meckel for being our liturgist this morning. Thank you, Peter. And I do believe that we are refreshmentless today. So I hope that you will all take a moment after the service to go into Fellowship Hall and greet our Zoom members and let them know that we're still with them together somewhere in the Ethernet. And that would be wonderful. At this point in the service, I invite all who are able to please stand and join responsively in the call to worship printed in the bulletin.
Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life.
In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of achievement.
For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today well lived makes yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope.
Look well, therefore, to this day. Let us join together in singing the first two verses of hymn 102, Now Thank We All Our God. Please be seated. At this point in the service, I invite us all into a few moments of silent prayer and meditation. I invite you to take this time to center your hearts, your minds, your bodies, and your spirits into this time and space that we are creating together. Let us join together now in silent meditation. Our reading for this morning is from Paul's letter to the Romans. And this letter was the last letter that Paul wrote, most likely written around 55 to 57 CE. At the same time, this letter was written earlier or prior to any of our canonical Gospels. It is the only letter that Paul wrote to an audience that he had never met and did not know. And this letter has had a huge impact on Christian theology. Some say that, quote, Christian theology can easily be characterized as a series of footnotes to this letter, end quote. It also, quote, figures greatly in the history of Western civilization, unquote. According to the authors of the book, The Authentic Letters of Paul, a new reading of Paul's rhetoric and meaning. And our reading this morning is a very short excerpt that's found about 3/4 of the way through this letter, which itself is 16 chapters long. The authors of the Authentic Letters of Paul, in summing up the focus of this final portion of Romans, point out that God's unending solidarity with the lost, the marginalized, the quote-unquote nobodies in the world, is the fundamental basis for our behavior and our life together. They write, quote, "For Paul, living in solidarity with the anointed, does not provide the occasion for asserting moral superiority, for gaining advantage, or for asserting one's rights at another's expense. That is still living in the old world of power and control, forgetting the very meaning of the death of the anointed. It is a time to surprise each other in compassionate ways that have yet to be imagined." End quote. Let's take a listen to this excerpt from the book of Romans.
From Romans 13, verses 8 to 12. You have no obligation to each other except to love one another, because the person who loves the other has fulfilled the law. The commandments: do not commit adultery, do not commit murder, do not steal, do not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this single sentence: you must love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to the neighbor, therefore love is what fulfills the law. I don't have to tell you that we're living in the most decisive moment in human history. The hour has already passed for you to be roused from your sleep, because the time of ultimate fulfillment is nearer now than when we first put our unconditional trust in God. The night is almost gone. The day is almost here. Let us rid ourselves of the preoccupations of the darkness and clothe ourselves with the armor of the light.
Let us join in singing hymn number 549 in the hymnal, "Where Charity and Love Prevail." Our reading from the letter to the Romans this morning seems to have two main themes. The first, the primacy of love as fulfilling the Mosaic law and as fulfilling what it means to be human. And here Paul echoes what was taught in the Mosaic law, that it could all be summed up in the commandment to love God with all your heart, body, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. He also echoes other first century rabbis who taught the golden rule to treat others as you would want to be treated. And Paul echoes the Torah, where it is written in Deuteronomy 6:5, "You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might." And from Leviticus 19, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." There is nothing new here, but notice the continuity between Paul, Jesus, and the Torah. This is good Jewish theology and practice, and it is good Christian theology and practice. And this is shared by many other religions beyond Judaism and Christianity as well. This is really the underlying theme for every service, for every time we gather, for every time we meet one another, for every moment of every day. Now, Paul obviously thought, if you read his letters, Paul obviously thought that we have obligations towards one another. One thing he was not was an anything goes kind of guy. Yet here he states, quote, "You have no obligation to each other except to love one another." Love, not like. Love, not a feeling, but a choice and an action and a way of relating. And this is all in the context, in Paul's day and age, of what Paul viewed as his mission. I mean the particulars beyond loving one another. And that has to do with bringing together people who were different, Jews and Gentiles, in the case of the first century, which is really Jews and everyone else in the world. That's what Gentiles or the nations means, everyone else. And I believe that it is most likely that it was Paul's encounter with a group of Jewish followers of Jesus that were welcoming and finding a way to love these Gentile outsiders and welcome them into their midst. That Paul's encounter with a group like that was what transformed him into becoming a follower of Jesus himself, following a Jewish rabbi he had never met, but only knew about through the stories and the actions of those who had. What a wonderful theme for any and every service. The second theme in our reading today has to do with Paul's perception of the time that he was living in. He called it, quote, "the most decisive moment in human history." What specifically might he have meant? Well, there was a sense in Paul's theology in which this bringing together of Jews and all the other nations fulfilled a vision, a prophetic vision within the Torah. And that was the eventual incorporation of the nations into Israel, who is called to be a light to the nations. This coming together of the covenant community with everyone that is outside of it. It was a time when Israel would be a light to the nations, and all people would seek to know Adonai and to live in right relationship with one another and with creation. And this idea, this vision, represented a profound hope for transformation in society. And I do believe that Paul thought he would live to see this transformation happen. In this letter to the Romans, his last writing, he is planning to travel to Rome and then from Rome on to Spain, which at that time in the Mediterranean world was the western frontier of all that they knew. And Paul says in this portion, it is past time to wake up. The night is almost gone and day is almost upon us. I mean, the urgency in this writing is palpable. And Beverly Gaventa, in her essay on Romans in the Woman's Bible Commentary, writes, Paul proposes a connection between humanity and the remainder of creation because God is visible in the created world. This statement imagines a vital link between humanity, the remainder of creation, and the God who creates. Creation groans along with human beings in wait for redemption. Paul here asserts a fundamental continuity between humanity and our earthly home. That continuity can stimulate not only a fresh appreciation of the relationship between humanity and the rest of creation, but a commitment to treat creation itself as a gift from God. End quote. Now, in her statement, Gaventa is pulling together the whole of the book, or the letter of Romans. And she says that in this letter, Paul asserts that one of the major themes in theology is solidarity between humanity and all creation. Sounds remarkably contemporary, doesn't it? When I reflect on this phrase, we are living in the most decisive moment of human history. I can't help but think of the ecological crisis we have created through our actions in colonizing the world, exploiting the planet and other people, seeking and hoarding wealth and power, all the while failing a basic tenet of being a good neighbor, cleaning up our own mess. We have certainly transformed our world, and not in a good way. Is there a new world transforming message for humanity today, as Paul thought and hoped that his message for humanity 2,000 years ago was hope for world transformation? Paul believed that the Spirit of God was empowering him and the communities that he served and loved. And this power and presence was a moral force for directing human relationships, actions, and community, and entered into the world through human agency in partnership with the eternal. Each moment, we have an opportunity to connect with one another, to express our solidarity with the world, with creation, and with the loving essence of our being within us, and express our love. While the issues that we face today seem enormous, and they will certainly not be solved in any one single initiative or action, we have created, to a large extent, this overheated, polluted, thirsty, megastorm world through our actions and our inactions. And I do believe that our actions can also help heal, restore, and sustain a better world in which all creation can once again thrive. And I believe that it will take many, many wise and mindful acts of kindness and care for creation, through which we will create a better future for coming generations, and that this will involve sacrifice and discipline and many difficult changes, not just personally, but in society. But one way or another, we will not perpetually continue to exploit the planet, hoard its wealth, and kill off its creatures. That will lead to an ending. It will not go on forever. The choice is, what transformed world do we want to live in? Whatever our answer is, it will be the transformed world that we create with our actions. It appears that the most decisive moment in human history is always now. Now. I want to close with a poem by William Stafford titled "A Ritual to Read to Each Other." If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs, but not to recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people stay awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep.
Please give as you're able.
65. He's on his way to the coast, north of where most of the major damage was, my understanding. And hopefully will be safe home soon. So, gratitude for Tom and him being okay, and prayers for all those people whose lives were lost, all their families and loved ones, and all trauma in our world today. God, hear our prayers. Is there anything folks have to share this morning? Rich?
I think over here, you check to make sure your microphone's on.
Yes, unless it ran out of. This mic?
Well, there, yeah. You might have to just use the hand for yourself and for the congregation.
Okay. I think the battery in my mic is too low to work. So thank you for letting me know. My apologies to our live streaming folks that missed that. We said some prayers for the people of Morocco and Marrakesh and all who are going through that awful earthquake and devastation, and prayers of gratitude for Ken and Faye Morley's son, Tom, who was over there in Marrakesh and is okay and hopefully coming home soon. So, are there any other joys or concerns? Wayne.
I just want to say thanks be to God for Dan Riley. Had a little episode, had to be in the hospital, is out now, doing well, and he's in recovery from an episode with his heart. So good to have him back.
Yes. Thanks. Thanks be to God. Got to get used to using this today. Bob.
Yeah, I sort of asking for the prayers of two of my friends that are in their 80s that both have terminal cancer, and the doctors have told them both that they have about a year left to live. So the one woman is named Judy, and she got out of the hospital this week and is working in her garden and plans to do that. And then the other guy, Jim, in Santa Cruz, who I served overseas with for a number of years, he's taking off next month to sail to the South Pacific and not planning on coming back. But I think that's a lesson there. I'm 79, and I only have a year left if they're in their 80s. But I think the situation of death is always around us who are elders. And it just rocks me still to lose my friends.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate you sharing that today. In some ways, this awareness of our mortality can be a gift to help us choose the life we want to live while we have it. I also want to lift up for our prayers and our concern Bud Carlson. He is in Carmel Hills recovering, and for a successful recovery and obeying doctor's orders, which is probably the most challenging thing for him for the next 6 weeks. Let's keep Bud and Elizabeth in our thoughts and our prayers. God, hear our prayers. Kathy, I think you've got something to celebrate today, don't you?
I know Rick already knows because I emailed him a picture, but 3 weeks ago I brought in a blanket to sort of kind of get blessed here. I entered it into the fair, and Tuesday I went to pick it up, and I had to wait in line. I kept looking on the tag that was on my blanket. There was something there, and I'm thinking, okay, what color is it? What color is it? And I got a first place ribbon for it. So that was my joy for the day, and I'm thrilled.
Great, Kathy. Congratulations. Wonderful. And it was wonderful that we got to see it a few weeks back, or a month or so back, before you put it in. Oh, great. Great. Thank you. Well, if there's nothing else that folks wish to share at this point, I invite us all into a few moments of silent prayer together. After a little bit of time has gone by, I'll invite you to join in saying this paraphrased version of the prayer of Jesus that is printed in the bulletin. Let us join together now in silent prayer. Hear us now as we say this new version of that ancient prayer that our brother Jesus taught us to pray, saying, Great Spirit, loving parent, and source of all, in you we find heaven and holiness and hope for our world's renewal. May we today have food to eat, forgiveness to share, and justice for all creation. May we have strength in times of trial and oppression, loss and sadness, for it is in love I'm sorry. It's the memory situation. At this point, are there any announcements that folks have to make this morning? I just have two this Tuesday evening. We'll have our meditation service at 7 p.m. The link will be going out Tuesday afternoon. And on Thursday, we have our book group discussion at 1:30. Poetry Unbound. It's been a great group, a lot of fun. If you're curious, let me know and I'll send you the link and you can join us. Are there any announcements that anyone here has? All right, if not, then I invite all who are able to please stand and join in singing our closing hymn, For the Earth Forever Turning, one of your song sheets. May you go forth this day in peace. May the mountains and the hills and the valleys rejoice that you are here to love and to serve this wondrous life all around us in all its variety. Go forth this day in peace, in love, and a deep, abiding commitment to care for our world. Amen.
Thank you.